Welcome to the Miniatures Paintbrush. Today we're going to clean up some gaps using sculpting epoxy. Alrighty, so when I talk about gaps, when you put a model together, you have, sometimes you have these little gaps that present themselves. So when you're gluing the pieces together, you have these little holes that when you paint up, it's going to be pretty obvious that there's a hole. Say if you're putting a head onto a miniature, you're going to have the neck exposed with a big old gash. I mean, you could make that work to your advantage if you'd like to, by accentuating the hole, making the cut, or you can fill it up. So there are several different types of epoxy and different kind of other putties as well. We're going to talk about putties today. Right there, I am working on some green stuff, and that's what it's called, and it's an epoxy putty. Originally, these putties were developed for plumbing repairs. Other different kinds of putties. Here's green stuff, but you also have milliput, which I don't show on this video here, and epoxy sculpt, which is the first thing I showed as well. And so I have some of the epoxies and some of the gap filling, different methodologies for gap filling. Not all of them. I kind of just use what I feel works best. I keep on trying new things. So when it comes to these epoxy putties, one of the details is that they come in two parts, and they activate when you combine. That means you have to mush them together like I'm doing right there. And you should take around equals amounts. Some people like to use the yellow more than the blue, but it's definitely up to your choice, and play around with it. And I put them on the back of my thumb on the nail there, so it's easy to kind of rip off and manipulate. I'm going to show you how I do that. So one very important thing when it comes to epoxy putties is you kind of want to use different items to take a piece of one activant or reagent and another item to remove the other part of the reagent, because if you mix any of the two together while you're pulling them off the original tubes, then you're going to start a catalyst which is going to harden, and you're going to lose some of your putty. Now, I've heard a lot of things when it comes to storing these putties. I heard that if you put them in a Ziploc bag and put them in the freezer, then when you're ready to use it, like 24 hours before you're ready to use it, kind of like take it out of the freezer, it'll make the epoxy last for virtually forever. I mean, not literally forever, but virtually forever. When you need the parts together, you want to make sure you have clean hands, or if you want to wear gloves, but you don't really need to wear gloves. You may want to wash your hands after mixing it. I didn't do it here, but that might help with the stickiness. Now, when it comes to green stuff, it's really, really sticky. But epoxy putties like these adhere very well to rough up surfaces, though. You want to make sure that maybe you sanded something down for a bit before you put it on there, just to ensure that it really, really sticks. Now, I like epoxy putties best, in my opinion, because you can sand them down later after they get hard. You have to wait 24 hours for them to cure, unless you want to bake them. Well, if you're sculpting an entire miniature out of this stuff, then maybe you do want to bake them, but it does swell up if you bake. If you bake it too soon, so you want to wait that 24 hours before you get that done. All right, well, here are, I have some hex wraiths that I'm going to do in an upcoming project, possibly a painting tutorial, so I can match or continue on with my army. And you can see here that just following these up, I mean, the green stuff or epoxy putty here is working so very, very well. I like the fact that any one of these putties that I'm going to show you, you can sand them down after they're dry. But dry times usually are quite long. So that's green stuff. Next, I want to show you working with the Epoxy Sculpt by Aves. Now, some people use, I guess it's Perfect. Oh gosh, there's another epoxy that you can use as well, and some people like to mix this epoxy sculpting putty with that other one, only because of the texture of this Aves brand, and it's very very soft and malleable. So you got to take two equal parts. I did use two separate, I guess, putty knives to get each component out. There's an A and a B. You want to mix it together completely. If you don't mix it together completely, then it's not gonna react the way you'd like it to. And then you'd have to wait for 5 minutes. That's right, 5 minutes. You gotta wait for 5 minutes so it can, so it doesn't really fall apart. Because when you're kneading it together at first, it kind of gets really, really mushy. And the thing about Aves and working with it that I've noticed is that it's super soft. And I really like that. When I'm working with green stuff, it's super tacky or sticky, which I'm not a very fan of. It's like working with bubble gum. But yeah, you can sand it down, make it even, make the mold line, the gaps disappear virtually. And that's why I like working with these putties, but there are so many others, and there's a lot of different brand names you can go by. So these are epoxy putties, and I'm going to show you how I work that into this air filter right here. But this is not the only putties that we're going to show you today. There are others as well. We're talking about these epoxy putties. Again, they come in two parts, and you put them together, you knead them together, and then you work with them. I'm going to add Aves to other epoxies, possibly even green stuff, to see if it, I guess, makes it not so tacky as far as the green stuff is concerned. But there are other things that you may want to use green stuff for, that you need that tackiness. Sort of like if you wanted like a quill of a porcupine to poke up, and when you apply it, you kind of use a metal blade and kind of stick it to it and just like yank it upwards as it's drying and getting hard, and you form like a quill or a point. So that might be something you may do to create spikes or something else, so you can be creative with this and sculpt with it if you want to. All epoxy putties are sculptable, I guess, as far as my understanding is concerned. So, once you've got all this stuff on, you may want to sand and paint over it. So once the putty is dry, it can be sanded smooth. And with the shape of to shape it properly, blend the filler with and plastic. So some of these things can shrink, like some of the epoxies can shrink. I was told the green stuff can shrink, and that could be a shortfall, because if epoxy putty is covering something evenly and it shrinks, well, then you can have another gap, a smaller one though. So just make sure to add more putty on top of it if that happens, and then sand one more time, and that should be well. Just make sure that when you're sanding these stuff down, to wear some eye protection and a respirator, because the dust is an irritant. In most cases, putties in general, they mimic the plastic that you have there, or metal, and basically disappears when you paint it, that's definitely when you want to go for a finished, expert finished piece. And that details like that, it blending into each other, one piece to the next, so it doesn't look like a toy and it looks like a living item, is what you're going for, that realism, even on a fantasy scale, if that makes any sense. Now, large fills may absorb paint differently, so keep that in mind. You might want to seal those areas, maybe with a little super glue, then sand them smooth again. Super glue in its own right can be a filler, so that's something you may want to keep in mind as well. So talking about different kinds of putties, with this one, is super soft, the Aves, and I had a kind of broke apart as I was getting smaller pieces with it. I think it's advisable maybe if you can mix it in with something else. If it's that small of a item that you need, you see, I'm taking really small bits and kind of like getting it in there. I try to use tools to get it in there, but I found out that that using my finger was just fine, really. I just kind of put it in there and I dip my finger in water, just to smooth it out there. So we're gonna show you some other. I want to show you some brands of different kind of epoxies. Later on, I'm going to show you an epoxy solvent-based putty, which is stinky and sticky. They contain organic solvents, like an acetone or a toluene, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And just like like a plastic cement glue, the solvents can melt the plastic just a bit. And this was pretty much fusing the pieces together. Um, I mean, these things are really good as far as filling in gaps. It is possibly a gold standard if you want for the hobby. Um, but you don't want to lose any detail, especially on a miniature. So sometimes it's better just to play it safe and use the epoxy putties and mess around with that. Now, before using a solvent putty, um, you want to like mix the tube in. Here's an example of testers of a solvent putty. You mix the tube in, and I'm going to show you that. I massage the tube to mix the chemicals that can separate, just like paint does when you want to shake a paint can or a paint bottle. Squeeze the putty into either a scrap piece of paper. I use the top of a water bottle, just a cap. But this one actually I applied. I tried to put it on a cap, and then I went to apply it directly onto the item itself, and just mess around with not gold, a metal, I guess sculpting knife. Um, Now, if you don't mix them, I mean, if you uh, if you leave that cap open, it'll dry prematurely. So you got to be careful with putting that back. Um, But you have a lot of different choices to choose from here. You have Squadron Green puts out a solvent-based putty. You have Testers, which I'm using here, and Tamaya Basic type are all standards for most modeling applications. Um, I'm going to talk about water-based putties as well. Now, I don't have any here, although I ordered some. Vallejo puts one out. And then there's another one called Perfect Plastic Putty. And water-based, unlike solvent-based, they're cousins, so to speak. Have little odor or almost no odor that you can detect, and you can handle them with fewer precautions. So they're pretty much safe, and you can use like a flat spoon or something to put them over a gap. You can squeeze them directly onto the seam as well. You can remove any excess with some water because it's a water-based solvent. So the other types are Perfect Plastic Putty and Acrylios Vallejo Plastic Putty, and they're also very, very popular. Here I also have another type. It's like a glue type. I guess when I said you can use super glue to fill in gaps, this is a type of that. It's called Zap a Gap, and specifically designed for gaps in mind. But I'm pretty sure you can use it as a glue as well. It's very thin. But as far as glues are concerned, I do like Tamaya's very thin cement. It goes on with a brush. It's amazing. But I use that, and then I use Gorilla Glue. You can use other types as well, but when you're using those kinds like Gorilla Glue, when it dries, it turns like really, really white. I wonder, I'm going to see what Zap-A-Gap does and see if it's worth it or not. But, for those really, really small gaps, Zap-A-Gap might be the way to go because it just pours over it and you can sand it down, and it's a quick simple and dirty method to do it. Now, I didn't put the Zappa cap directly on. I used this metal knife, sculpting knife, just kind of get it into the areas. Now, I didn't really need to cover this seam here, but I'm doing it for the purpose of this video. This is for a 1963 Corvette split window coupe that I'm going to do a tutorial of as well on the channel. So those are all types. You have the solvent-based putties, you have water-based putties, and you have epoxy putties. And I'm playing around with them here. I'm kind of showing you how they go on and how you have to manipulate them. And, you know, it's really not that bad. You do have a lot of choice. You can play around with it, and each application has their own, benefits and their drawbacks as well. Like you cannot sculpt with Zappa Gap, for instance. And then solvent-based putties, you have to be careful because they can be toxic when inhaled. So please wear protection for that as well. And when you sand these things as well. Now, all these things can be sanded, so that's a positive as well. All right, well, I'm just going to finish this video out. And if you have any questions, leave them down below and let me know what you think. All right, this is me signing off. See you next time. I hope you learned how to fill in some gaps. The products that I have listed are by far not the only products out there. There are plenty of products out there, but these are the ones that I use most often, and they work fabulous for me. Depending on the application, I do like to use more green stuff on my miniatures, like wargaming miniatures or other things like that. And for metal as well, metal miniatures as well, I find that the green stuff actually sticks towards the metal stuff a little better than anything else because it's like very, very sticky to work with. But I was told there were other kind of modeling epoxies that would work as well. Well, I hope this video was helpful, and if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. That helps. If you want to keep abreast of all the things that are coming out in the miniatures paintbrush, then hit that subscribe button. And the best thing you can do for my channel is share it with others, and hopefully that would help them as well. And comment as well. I mean, if you have any ideas or something you would like to share or something you'd like to, a question you may have for me, leave it down in the comments section below. Well, I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you again on the Miniatures Paintbrush.